This is From the Mezzanine, a podcast about film and TV. We are Matt and Chuck, and we're about to bring you 90 plus minutes of pure film and TV commentary. We're not here to serve you ads, we aren't professional shills, and we don't trade positive reviews for special access. We do this on our own time, with our own money, purely for the love of the game. And that's why we're prepared to tell you what is the best, worst, and the middling in film and TV. Chuck?
That's the thing. At least if it's outright terrible, you can revel in how awful something is, but sometimes you're just left whelmed, I think is the term for it, where it's, just simply okay. But, you kind of have to take your chances these days, and you're bound to get burned by something that's just meh every once in a while. It can't always be an extreme. But when it comes down to it, we're all just, spending our money on all kinds of junk. Sometimes it isn't always junk. Sometimes it's something, really special. It's a diamond in the rough. Which brings us to the parting question from last week, related to physical media versus digital media. And this is an evolving proposition for myself personally over the years. There was a time where the whole concept of just digital, bullshit on a hard drive was the most liberating thing ever. But I've come around on that as I've gotten older for a variety of reasons. But where did you land on your question from last week?
Yeah, so I was kind of speaking particularly about, film, music, video games, books, and I kind of fall at different places with all these things. With books, I'm still like 100% physical. I absolutely hate e-readers so much, just the look of them, like reading off of a screen, having to lug them around, and they never look right in the sun, even if you're in a little bit of sunlight, and then you have to worry about the batteries. So I'm 100% physical books all the way still. But music, I've pretty much gone all to streaming. I used to be a big vinyl guy, but it got too expensive of a hobby. Where
made too much of a comeback. Vinyl.
Yeah, yeah, and they started jacking the price of new vinyl nowadays is $20 to $40 depending on how many discs something is, and it's just you have to pick and choose if you have limited resources or if you don't have a entirely disposable income, and so I kind of chose movies, and so that's kind of my big. That's where I kind of sink a lot of my money into is physical movies. And I still have a lot of digital stuff, digital copies of stuff, purely because most physical Blu-rays come with those nowadays. And I always redeem them.
Those ultraviolets. Yeah.
Yeah.
do you ever install them on anything though? Do you ever what device would you even put it on your phone?
No, I have them all registered with Vudu.
I see. Okay.
The service Vudu, because you go on there and you put in the code, and then it basically they give you a copy of the movie to pull from a streaming collection, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
But other than that, yeah, I'm mostly physical still with that stuff, and I have probably anywhere from 100 to 120 Blu-rays and 4K Blu-rays, and that's not that much compared to a lot of people. I really only buy a physical copy of something if I really, really like the movie, or if it's something I know I'm going to watch multiple times over the next 5, 10, 20 years, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Halloween, stuff like that. So, but yeah, what about you?
Kind of the same. I have never gotten anything out of e-readers. Even I have an iPad mini, and the prospect of reading anything off of it just doesn't happen. But I love collecting physical comics. I stopped doing that, but I'm just gonna lug those things everywhere till the day I die. But if I'm gonna buy anything physically lately, it's books and movies. Music, I quit buying even CDs a long time ago, but the hoarding of digital content is also something I just stopped doing. I used to carefully curate my folders, not for like all the because I lived in like a house with a dude for a long time where we had a media brick that we would just load up with shit. So it didn't matter if it was acquired by legal means or not. It went on that thing. Like every CD, every movie, like every Blu-ray or DVD got ripped and thrown on there, even if it was bought physically. So I just depended on that for a long time. But in if I want to be able to watch something without an internet connection, like if I go out to the lake, where we have a VCR and a DVD combo, like, or at least we used to. That thing just died last summer. Rest in peace. But being able just to throw something on without having to worry about having to do a handshake with a Wi-Fi network is actually a really convenient thing. Even more convenient than being able to get anything as long as you have internet, in a bizarre way. So, I have a spinner rack, of DVDs that I've been filling up slowly, DVDs and Blu-rays, and it's just going thrifting. What catches my eye? Like, being able to buy Vicky Cristina Barcelona on Blu-ray for $5, I wouldn't have, bought that thing any other way. Digitally especially, but like I have my Amazon account, and if there's really something I want to have, regardless of if it's on a streaming platform, I buy it on there. But I've found myself buying the physical copy of things more and more as the years go on, because they, Big Brother can't take that away from you. There are people who violate some terms of service with video games, especially. Buying physical video games is something that I've started doing more and more often, and not relying on Steam as much, because that could bite you in the ass if you're not fucking careful.
Yeah. They could. I mean, any given year, they could be like 6-8 months. A couple of bad choices, 6 to 8 months from going out of business.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and you look at what happened to all those Oculus customers who, lost everything because the Facebook algorithm nuked. Nuke banned them from all the various Facebook platforms. So the metaverse isn't all it's cracked up to be if you're excluded for arbitrary reasons. So that's kind of where I land on it. Like, you're doing yourself a favor if you buy something physical. At least that's my logic. And if it's something I want, something I know I'm going to want to watch more than once or at any time in the future, I grab it. All these video stores going out of business is kind of sad to see, but that's the only way I'd be able to get a hold of Midsummer on Blu-ray, for like less than asking price if I went to like Best Buy or Amazon for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a time and a place for all of it, but I don't think that physical media is ever going to go away. It was half the reason why the last year's like GameStop, like meme stock thing happened, was because the industry guessed wrong a little bit, and they, especially given the pandemic, they really, misjudged how valuable physical media was going to continue to be for consumers. And it's an interesting, thing to pay attention to.
Yeah.
All right. But kicking off the news of the hour here, we had a trailer for Avatar: The Way of Water before Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And we're going to, kick off with a little preview of that thing. I'm going to put the borders around it just for safety, because you just never know what's going to piss off the copyright algorithm these days. But what did you think, being able to glimpse the luscious oceans of Pandora for the first time since 2009? That's the last time I got to see this in a theater.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I expected, but it was definitely more than this, I guess. Like, I don't know. This trailer was just like a whole lot of nothing. Like, sure, I mean, there's a lot of beautiful scenery, but it kind of lacked a lot of like wow moments, and you have absolutely no indication of what the story is. It didn't give you any of that. And when this played in my theater before Doctor Strange, it was met with dead silence. Absolute, like nobody cared and nobody like cheered or anything. And yeah, it was I don't
What
know.
is
It
this?
just it doesn't. Um, it's not inspiring, I guess, is what I'll say. And I don't know. What about you?
I kind of felt the same way. It's the same reason why they were trying. So I noted this, last time, but like they tried pretty desperately to make people give a shit. Like remember Avatar? Remember this awesome, oorah, like jarhead line that this character who you can't remember his name of said? Like I don't know. I listen. Do you know what Chapo's Trap House is?
Yeah, it's a podcast, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
dirtbag left, podcast, but they do movie reviews every once in a while. And just for fun, I listened to the episode they did on Avatar because it got their juices flowing as modern internet socialists. But what they pointed out was that this Jake Sully character is like deliberately designed to be as uninteresting and unmemorable as possible. And yeah, I could give two shits about what the fuck this movie is about. It's just the latest $1 billion roller coaster from James Cameron. That's all that's what anyone should expect from it.
Yeah, and like the other realization that I had while watching this was, they're gonna like make us dig out the 3D glasses again for this.
Yes,
where
yes, they
like
are.
some theater employees all across the country are gonna have to go to storage rooms and dig out the dusty cardboard box of 3D glasses from 2009 to 2011 or whenever that was big. And it's like nobody, I don't know, I haven't seen a 3D movie, I don't think, since like, oh god, I can't even remember, like one of the Marvel movies, probably one of the early ones.
My last one was Mad Max Fury Road. I saw that in 3D.
Oh, okay. Sure.
That was the last time I saw something in 3D. But they had AMC last night had exactly 2 theaters showing the 3D version of Doctor Strange, and then they had 30 fucking theaters of regular 2D version, and I think that just kind of illustrates where everybody is at with 3D. No one gives a shit. We already kind of know what it's like. Ooh, yeah, like I remember seeing the glowing things float in front of my face, and that was immersion. But it's just not the novelty it was anymore. And I know that this is the guy that wrote the book. It's all purpose built to serve that aspect of the experience as far as James Cameron goes. But yeah, this stuff is gonna be mothballed in between every single one of these sequels. No one else in the industry is trying. I saw some poor sap trying to sell a Sony like 3D 1080p TV on the Facebook Marketplace recently, and everyone just laughed at him because who even wants that in their home experience when you spend as much money and you have a 4K one? Look infinitely better. Yeah, it's a we have to wait till December. Where this movie is too good for the summer. So I think that tells us everything.
Yeah.
Moving on though. This is just a little, tongue-in-cheek shout out to Sony, because the Chinese censors demanded that they remove the Statue of Liberty from Spider-Man No Way Home, and if you have seen that movie, you will know that that's functionally impossible, considering the finale is entirely set on this weird Statue of Liberty that now has Captain America's shield for some reason. Yeah. And what was the background on that? I still don't know it. Like, what was the point of that?
I don't know. I think it probably just has something to do with the fact that he died, or I guess he didn't die technically. He just went back in time for forever.
Yeah.
Something to do with that. Yeah, that was odd that they didn't explain that, or they didn't pay any like reference to it other than just it being there in the background.
Yeah. But Sony's leaving a few $100 million on the table by doing this as far as the global box office take is concerned. So do we give them props, or did they just kind of figure we've made enough money? People are buying Blu-rays of this now, so it's like, who gives a shit if China pays money to see this movie? They'll pirate it anyway. Is that kind of the assumption?
Yeah, I mean, I I guess I'd give them a little bit of props. I mean, otherwise Sony is like the worst movie studio. So when they do like do something relatively good, it's, I guess they should get their due. But yeah, I mean, this is so weird because what I want to know what exactly they, like, the Chinese censors thought was like objectionable about this, because the Statue of Liberty is so like innocuous in its political message. Like it's not like in your face. It's not like hardline, like, yeah, America. I mean, it's just very like innocuous, and most people probably wouldn't even notice. They're paying too much attention to
three
the
fucking
action
Spider-Man. There's 3 Spider-Men on screen.
So yeah, I mean, it's weird because like it's just so it's not that big of a deal, and it's weird that 5 years ago, it tells you how much time or how much China has changed in the past 5 years, because 5 years ago when Homecoming came out, they said nothing about the scene at the Washington Monument.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
well, this might be my view of it, but the Statue of Liberty is this. Oh, what the hell? What? But okay. I'll just finish my point quickly, and then we might have to address something. But we might have to pause and hop over to Discord, because Zoom is telling me that this meeting will end in 10 minutes. The fuckers. But the Statue of Liberty is all about, it's a beacon. Come here. This is where freedom is. This is where liberty's at. And they don't want their citizens to have any inkling of a better place than, mainland China. And I think that might be the logic behind it.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. We're just going to be doing this live, so to speak. But yeah, Zoom is bitches. And I don't know if I want to pay them money just to be able to use them. So we might have to get creative next week, figure out what our options are. But moving right along, before we were rudely interrupted. But yeah, China, you stupid. We'll just leave it at that. But in other news, HBO's kind of stupid. They got these 2 shows that are pretty good, for all things considered. You got One in Time, which is based on a book, as it happens, which, was researched from reality, about the Lakers dynasty during the 80s. Then you have Tokyo Vice, exploring, one journalist's, like basically his autobiography from his time working at a newspaper covering the crime beat in Tokyo. But what has come out, from all their successes is a mixed bag. A lot of the people who either knew or were the characters in Winning Time are very pissed off about how they've been portrayed. It does, like, especially Jerry West. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar spoke out, about it, but this is one sad old man who is just very mad at how he's being portrayed. Doesn't feel like it puts him in a good light. Says a lot of things did not happen that it showed, happening. Specifically the shot where he throws his fucking MVP trophy through a fucking window. And just in general, the vibes are just not that good. Coming from the people that Winning Time is about. Tokyo Vice, on the other hand, has a truthiness problem too, because some people who used to work with the actual journalist, I forget the gentleman's name, but he apparently Jake Edelson might have overblown some of the things he was involved in. But at the end of the episode of all of these both of these shows, they have this really, really long disclaimer, basically summed up by saying, this ain't a documentary, we're just having fun here. But how does that really cover their ass to you, or is there something a little icky about how they've been doing business?
I mean, I would say, if anything, they should maybe put that in front of every episode instead of behind, because by the time that pops up, people are reaching for the stop button on the remote.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if they really cared, they would put it before the episodes. But I guess I don't have too much of a problem with it, because like the thing is, by saying this is a true story, there's a certain number of people that wouldn't have watched the show that now will, just for that very fact, like based on a true story. That phrase alone gets so many people in the door. And then on top of that, you add the Lakers IP to this, like you make a show about the Lakers, and that gets even more people in the door, just with that IP alone. And if you were to just make a basketball show about an imaginary basketball team that doesn't actually exist, and that isn't a true story, nobody would give a shit. Like nobody would care. And so I mean, you have to play within like the realm of reality a little bit to get people in the door. And but yeah, what about you?
Well, it's specifically regarding Winning Time. The only issues I have, with like ultimately with what they're doing, is that I think it's like they're getting the spirit of the times right. They're getting the vibe of the environment and the individuals, as authentic as it should be, in my opinion. But they play fast and loose with the reality in ways that are dumb and that are easily verifiably not true. Like you've been keeping up with it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Sally Field's character, the actual mother of Dr. Buss, she was dead like 2 years before all this stuff happened. Oh. So she wasn't a player in the story at all. But they, I guess, wrote her into the show so that they could have a way of exploring who Dr. Buss was and just how stressful the real situation was. But they had other characters that could have, explained the financial precarious position they were in. Banking on this season, saving his whole life, basically. And there is like a soft little edge of propaganda to all of this, because the only way that they had so much access to the Lakers' intellectual property and to a lot of the different, people in the show is because Jeannie Buss was a huge supporter of it. And that is why her character comes off looking the best out of everybody involved, and why so many other people just get the really, gonzo treatment, versus her. Like you have to feel bad for Jerry West a little bit, because everybody, that was there at the time says this is not how this dude was. And that is not why this thing happened. But at the same time, I feel like the whole dynamic between like Pat Riley and, Paul Westhead and, McKinney, that little, triangle of, of tension, that is probably the most real thing about it. That and Magic Johnson just being a man whore. Like, like he can't feel too bad about how he's being portrayed, because he's literally co-signing documentaries, on Apple, where he's going into detail about a lot of his shenanigans. But you at the same time, you have Spencer Haywood being put on screen, being accused of putting a hit out on the whole Lakers team, which is something that didn't really happen, but he was ready to kill Paul Westhead. And that's the other thing. They make it look like it was this team decision to kick Spencer Haywood right before the finals, when it's very much confirmed that his cocaine addiction was such a problem that he passed out during practice, and then Westhead got rid of him. So they kind of do some weird things that, if you know Lakers lore, like wouldn't ring true. But this is just a fucking TV show. It is what it is. But yeah, apparently Jerry West is going to like sue HBO. He wants his pound of flesh for how he's being portrayed. And I guess that just makes me wonder, are we getting another season of this show? Are we getting a second season of Tokyo Vice after all this? Or are they just going to kind of like wash their hands of it since it's being controversial?
I could see, Tokyo Vice, the way it ends, it pretty much confirms that there has to be a second season, unless of course the show did terrible and they just don't want to. But the Lakers one, I think, is a little more up in the air, because it seems like everything's kind of coming to a head in this last episode, and they could definitely do more seasons of the show by showing more seasons of the team. But this, I think, a lot of the storylines are going to come to a close at the end of this season. So I think it's kind of touch and go with that. I mean, from what I understand, the show's doing really well, so they probably will.
Like, there are already people making, like, there could be volumes of winning time, because there are people who want to see a Kobe Shaquille O'Neal, God, what's his name? The North Dakota dude, the Bulls coach.
Oh yeah, God. I'm
blanking on. I can't believe I'm blanking on him, but yeah, have that era, showcased too. But that might be a little presumptuous, because we might get like because really the only seasons we care about seeing after this one are all the clashes with the Celtics, and there's maybe like 2 or 3 of those that are worth going into, like, because they lost they lost once and then they beat them all the other times. So it's like you could definitely get a few more seasons of TV out of this, but I'm unsure that it will be interesting going forward if we know that they're just going as fucking crazy as they want to, when reality's probably crazy enough. But I just wish they wouldn't make dumb, creative choices like, bringing a dead woman back to life.
Yeah,
but
that's a little far.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll just have to see. But these stories were kind of cropping up at the same time, and it seemed like we should talk about that. So, I'll have to catch up on Tokyo Vice, and we'll have to also see what the heck happens tomorrow. Are the Lakers gonna win? I wonder. But Apple TV has been on a roll lately. But you briefly wanted to touch on Slow Horses. So where is that show at now?
So it's done with its first season, and I just kind of wanted to. I've already talked about it. Said I really liked it. It's kind of a more a funnier Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, a little bit more irreverent too, and it ended really well. And there is going to be a second season, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Was this show did something I've never seen before, and it was so awesome, where the show ends on kind of a big revelation in the last minutes of the last episode. Big cliffhanger ending, big revelation, and then the second that the last frame cuts out, it says next season on Slow Horses, and then it proceeds to show clips from season 2 of Slow Horses, because that season's already filmed in the can. So it's like,
that's a thug move. That is a thug move.
So it was awesome, because the entire second season's already done filming, and it's literally just like in the can, and they're gonna probably release it later this year. And it was so awesome, because I wasn't expecting it. I don't think anybody was, and you get all these clips from season 2, and it was a great show. More
shows should do that. That is so baller. Just be like, hey, like, there's no suspense. We're here, bitches. Get ready. God, that is really cool. All right, that gives me confidence. I'm gonna dive right into that one as soon as I catch up on some other things. And probably after I finish watching another Apple TV offering, Shining Girls. Holy shit. I didn't expect this show to be what it was. I'm not going to run a trailer because we already had like a little bit ago. But basically this is a period piece with, that's about a woman who survived an attack, a brutal attack. Her name is Kirby. She works at a newspaper, and her life is just completely disjointed and incoherent. It's very mysterious, but by the time you get to episode 4, it all just clicks together, and you realize what you're dealing with. And I won't say it's unlike anything I've ever seen before, but it is just so fresh and assured of itself that, it's in keeping with like the quality of something like Severance, even though that show is obviously, as far as Apple TV goes, on a tier unto its own. But this is really exciting. And if you like something like Top of the Lake, for the star of both of them, this is definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I really like it so far too. It's like it's a really good slow burn mystery, and I find the show is very like distinctly Chicago. And I wanted to make sure this, and I did before we started recording, but they did film the entire show on location in Chicago, and you can tell
Good.
they did because there's like scenes on the subway or scenes just like outside buildings in downtown, and it's very it's nice for once to have a show that's actually filming in the city instead of like Vancouver as Chicago or something like that.
Toronto as New York, like that's both for Vancouver and Toronto have been more American cities than like they've ever actually been themselves. Like especially on TV too. Like there's entire sections of like TV credits that are all just like filmed in Vancouver.
Yeah.
God. And
the one thing I did want to say was I know what happens in the show because I've actually read the author of the book that this is based on. Her name's Lauren Bukes, and I've read one of her books, not this one, but another one of hers called Broken Monsters.
Okay.
And while I was deciding, if I wanted to read that book or this one, I kind of read up on this one and kind of had it spoiled for me. So I know what's going to happen. And I won't say anything, but I think it's handling the mystery of the show really well, and sort of the pivot that the show has to make at a certain point, because it gets pretty wild, and I think it's handling that really well as far as how slowly it's doling out details and stuff.
Very deliberate, very delicate. It could be, it could have been like full force and just way too obvious, but initially, it's like it handles everything in such a way that you aren't sure of anything, any more than the protagonist is. And by the time you're getting to the craziness and you're just like tripping through reality, spoilers a little bit, but like that was unexpected, but it makes complete sense once it happens. And it makes everything that you've seen just like crystallize in a way that, very effective. And, good cast. Is it Wagner Morrow? He formerly of Narcos, really good actor, and he's got a pretty meaty troubled journalist role. His son is hilarious because he's just this vagabond who just wants to play Atari. But Jamie Bell, fucking creepy, creepy, like kind of career redefining for him, because he's basically just been a pretty face in pretty much anything he's done ever since he was a kid. But in this, I want nothing to do with the man. He's just so unsettling.
Yeah, he's so weird, and I love the scenes of him like sort of stalking all the people. Like there's the one where the one woman, when she goes home and then he starts laying the Polaroids around the apartment.
Fuck that. Fuck that. And as soon as that started happening, it was like that was like one of the first clues that, oh, wait a minute. There's something else happening here with this guy. But to the show's credit, it doesn't explicitly say it. It just shows you. And that's enough. Because most other shows would have had some character just spell it out for you and for the audience, just so that no one has to think. But I appreciate any show that rewards you for just trusting it and going along with whatever it's doing. So I can't wait to see what the last 4 episodes of this brings. Might even be worth to read the book, because she's a South African writer.
Yeah, she reads very much like I don't know if you've ever read any Gillian Flynn books, but
yes,
it's very, very similar.
Okay,
very similar style.
And of course, she's the queen of unsettling thrillers, but hers are mostly grounded. This one, keeps you firmly on the ground until it almost starts. By the end of episode 4, you realize, oh shit, this is like Everything Everywhere All at Once, with a serial killer in it. So really fucking cool.
Mhm.
And because you put it on here onto our list, I also checked out The Cursed. The
Oh,
late
nice. Okay.
the because it's been on my radar. I'm down for pretty much anything that is gory and spooky. And
Mhm.
by God, was this thing fucking gory? And
Yeah.
it worked really well, especially for a dude who before this had basically just been like, to me, I've missed out a lot on his whole oeuvre. Like everything he's like, I saw Cashback, but I missed Metro Manila and everything else in between that and this. So to go from Cashback to this fucking movie kind of surprised me. I'm battling with getting a trailer up, but why don't you take it away? Describe this.
Yeah, so this is from Sean Ellis, and this movie was formerly known as the much better name of Eight for Silver, but for some reason the studio changed it to The Cursed, the infinitely generic The Cursed, and yeah, this one kind of came and went with no sort of fanfare at all. It was in theaters earlier this year, and this kind of reminds me of like this year's, for me anyways, this year's Empty Man,
Yeah.
where
Okay.
it's a horror movie that is really well done, and nobody cares about it. And but I really liked it, and it's kind of a werewolf story where in the 19th century, late 19th century France, some gypsies come along and lay claim to land that all this town is on, and then the townsfolk hire some bounty hunters or some mercenaries to kill them all, basically, and then they curse them. And yeah, it was great. I really liked just the slow burn nature of it, and the there was moments in this movie where it reminded me of like Barry Lyndon. Like there's that
Yeah.
scene where when the all the gypsies are being killed and the camera just stays on that static shot like on the hill, and you're just seeing the entire thing from far away, and oh, that was so good. And
Yeah, the exact, like when you compare this to The Northman, which probably had just a brutal sequence, but had you like, just like deep inside of it, to have that detachment and just to have all that horror going on in one solid, unbroken moment without any bells and whistles to it was almost just as impactful. I was gonna highlight that sequence as well. But what really shocked me was just how fucking gross it got. Like all the body horror going on, because it's not just simply that, oh, you're bit by this thing and you turn into a wolf person. No, like you're growing inside of like a cocoon, you grow a flesh cocoon and are reborn a monster. It's that I found that very imaginative. In terms of like, this isn't just the Wolf Man. This is a totally different kind of take. But I agree with you. That original title was much more badass.
yeah,
And and the wraparound sequence with World War One, that was kind of different too.
that was
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, where they pulled the silver bullet out of the guy. That was really cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I hope that more people see it now that it's on DVD and on video on demand. And yeah, I was going to highlight that the World War One or World War Two.
World War One,
right?
yeah, because there was mustard gas in the no man's
Right.
land, and it gave me, I don't know, it just like watching those sequences though really made me just like want desperately a Baltimore series, the Mike Mignola,
Oh yeah,
comic series that you showed me all those years ago. Holy fuck. I just want to see vampires and werewolves on the Somme. Just give me that shit.
Yeah.
And maybe Sean Ellis should be given the responsibility of realizing that, because he's an interesting filmmaker based on his filmography. He kind of jumps around.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I mean, his last movie, probably his most famous movie, is I think it's called Arthropod.
Yeah,
Arthropoid,
yeah,
with Cillian Murphy, and I think it's like a movie about a plot to kill a Nazi general during World War II, and
yeah,
so yeah, he goes all over the place.
yeah. To kill what was it, like Colonel Heydrich, who if you watch, there was an HBO thing called Conspiracy, and like he was one of the masterminds of the Holocaust. So
Yeah.
so Arthropoid is about like these guys, these assassins are just parachuted somewhere, and it's to kill that dude. So you can kind of you could watch Conspiracy and then watch Arthropoid just to see the through line, the continuum of that motherfucker. But yeah, Kenneth Branagh played him in Conspiracy, but I
Oh,
forget
okay.
I forget who plays him in Sean Ellis's film. But otherwise, The Cursed is, he wrote and directed it, and it was spicy, really good, really worth checking out. If you don't want to watch it on video on demand, just it will be on Netflix soon. I can just about
Oh, for
guess for
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Paramount Plus, they're constantly just trying to be the home for all the space obsessed nerd in your life, and we have a new Star Trek show. I have only been exposed to New Trek through Red Letter Media's videos on them, so maybe not like the most objective take. But what was it like actually watching this Strange New World series, which follows Captain Pike and the original crew of the Enterprise in the years before the original television series?
Yeah, so I'm in this same boat. I am like 100%, like I don't claim to be a uber Star Trek fan. I'm definitely a fair weather Star Trek fan. I've only seen the original series through like reruns on TV Land when I was a kid, and then I've seen TNG all the way through, but never bothered with Deep Space Nine. Never bothered with Enterprise. Any of those. Never bothered with any of them, and I've never bothered with the new ones because I've heard they're garbage, and Alex Kurtzman is garbage.
Yes,
So
he is. He
um,
cannot be redeemed. That motherfucker.
yeah. So the only reason I watched this is because I had heard really, really good things. And so, I mean, the first episode's out now, and I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. And this is kind of the Star Trek show that everyone's wanted since probably TNG,
Wow.
and
Okay.
it's really, really good. I mean, granted, there's only the one episode, but it has the makings of that, and um, it's definitely more of a episodic series, which is exactly what everyone wanted. The plot lines start and end with each beginning and end of the episodes. So
That's so reassuring to
yeah,
hear
it's
that.
really nice because they're all going to be bottle episodes, and they're all going to have their own little plot
Yeah,
lines.
because
And
no one on the fucking writers teams. Because I have watched some of Picard, the first
okay,
season of that, and the people who write this shit just smell their own farts and then just type away at their keyboards because they think that they have some wide sweeping contribution to humanity by writing this shit, but they don't have a coherent approach to anything that they do. So I'm glad that somebody finally said, you know what? Let's just do what old Trek did best. Give you 45 minutes worth of entertainment and just leave it. We don't need a sprawling epic here. And it's easier to have something significant to say if you can just get your message out in that 45 minutes versus 8 episodes down the road, because it does not hold up,
yeah,
from what I
yeah,
understand.
I've heard very, very bad things about those, especially Discovery too. Like, oh god, but yeah, this is so you kind of alluded to it earlier. Captain Pike, who was the captain of the Enterprise before Kirk, and in this series, he's played by Anson Mount, who we'll be talking about probably again a little later as the actor who portrayed the short-lived Black Bolt, but
Gets his day in the sun yet again. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it was great. I mean, the first episode, the story is he gets kind of recruited back into Starfleet after sort of having a crisis of faith, sort of, and they go to this planet where a society on this planet who is not ready for first contact has somehow gotten their hands on a warp drive or
Oh
warp drive
no.
technology,
Oh
and
shit.
so they're just gonna like completely like fuck it up basically, and he has to go there and like basically take it out of their hands making without making contact with them,
Okay.
or trying not to make
Cool.
contact with them. And so yeah, it was really good, and I'm probably gonna watch the rest of the show now. And it really I think it's kind of like rejuvenated the fan base a little bit. It's nice to kind of see Star Trek fans happy for once.
It goes a long way to create content that doesn't have contempt for its fan base. And that hasn't been true of New Trek throughout its existence, unfortunately. Yeah, because because things were missing from New Trek, obviously, and it almost made me wish that someone would jump on board the Culture franchise, like those books by Ian Banks, I think is how you say his name, because that was like a '90s like tech bro, like utopian version of like it was new. It was if since Star Trek sucks, this guy wrote the Culture, basically.
Okay.
But from the sounds of it, this is right back in the wheelhouse where it should be. Instead of tilting at culture war windmills, we get something worthwhile in the Trek world. So I'll have to take some time because Halo's really been letting me down.
Yeah, it is. Oh man, that have you seen the latest episode from this week?
I have not.
Oh god,
That show is floundering.
yeah,
We'll just say that right now. It's floundering. So we have Zoom as being a bitch. So we will move on quickly to our, instead of a mentionable segment, we have an in memoriam segment. We had a couple losses on April 28th. First and foremost was the artist Neal Adams, the man who along with Denny O'Neil revitalized Batman, completely rejuvenated Green Arrow and Green Lantern, and a bunch of other things. But he passed away. Do we know what he died from?
I don't know if it's been really released. I think people were aware that he was had some sort of long-term illness, but I don't know if he was as public about it as like say George Perez, who also recently just died. But
Literally just got the news a few hours before the show about George Perez. But you had a particular image you wanted to highlight, which is from the Amazing Adventures of Superman.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit about Neal Adams because I really like his art. My childhood. I mean, if you were a child in the late 80s, early 90s, if you had a Batman lunchbox or bed sheets or stickers, chances are the artistic image of Batman on those things was Neal Adams' design, was his Batman. And so, I've been, as a kid, I was just like entrenched in his art style. And then as I grew up and I kind of went back and read some of his comics, and he was doing comics all the way up until, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I read
That's
those
crazy.
too. And this particular one, I mean, he really like revolutionized the comic book cover, because before him, you didn't see these covers where Superman's cape went around the spine of the comic, because on this photo, that's what you can see on the left-hand side there, the cape going onto the spine. And then also like the characters covering up the logo, like where Superman's head is covering the U there. Before that, people were like, no, you can't do that. You can't cover up the logo. Why would you do that? Nobody is going to know what it is. And he's just like, fuck that. I'm just going to cover up.
I'm gonna do it, damn it.
And and just like his style on covers, especially of being able to show action, like on this one, of the kiss. And comic book covers before him were so static and boring. And he really revolutionized them. And I got a chance to meet the guy at Minneapolis Comic-Con in 2017.
That's rad.
And it was an interesting experience because he's very intimidating. He's a Comic-Con staple. Like if you go to a Comic-Con somewhere in the US, he more than likely was going to be there. And what he always did was surround himself with his art, where he would have like 10 or 12 tables of just his art, and then he would be in the middle of all of it, and in order to get to him you had to walk down like an aisle of all of his art.
God.
And it was very like intimidating, and all of his art is way too expensive for anybody to afford. And yeah, I met him, and I mean, he was, I guess I don't want to like sugarcoat it. I mean, he's kind of a grouch. He's kind of a grump, but in like a funny way. Like he, you know, he's kind of earned that reputation. If you'll talk to people in the comic book world, of kind of being a little bit of a grouch, but very well-meaning and funny at the same time. And later that day when I met him, I saw him on a panel with Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Steve Orlando, and Charles Soule.
Jesus.
And he has absolutely like no bones about starting fights with people or talking shit about other creators. He'll talk shit about anyone and everyone. And especially like Joel Shuster and stuff. He had a really big bone to pick with that guy. But yeah, it's pretty funny. Oh, and Bob Kane too. He fucking hated Bob Kane. He talks so much shit
as he should. Everyone should hate Bob Kane.
And yeah, it was really funny. And I think he's very well-meaning, but he has a certain sense of humor where, you know, he would be liable to offend people in the year 2022. And but yeah, I guess rest in peace. And
gone but not forgotten.
Yeah.
I'll never forget at San Diego Comic-Con during some DC panel. I don't remember which one it was, but it was back when Dan Didio was running the joint, and somebody went up to the mic during the Q&A section and was just like, "Yo, Dan, what the fuck is up with Batman Odyssey? That's like the worst thing you guys have published ever." And Dan Didio was just like, "You shut the fuck up, you piece of shit. That's Neal fucking Adams you're talking about." And I just remember, I will always remember that, because he was much loved and hugely influential. And sometimes when you're the king, you better not fucking talk shit, because Dan Didio will dress you down in public.
Yeah.
Very briefly, I would like to also acknowledge that we lost Larry Woiwode, who is North Dakota's poet laureate. He got pretty famous in the late 60s, early 70s among the New York literary crowd for some books he wrote. And like Beyond the Bedroom Wall, What I'm Going to Do, I Think, were the titles of them. And, you know, very much entrenched in like the Thomas Wolfe Tribeca community. He used to be good buddies with, you know, Robert De Niro. He went to a lot of his parties. But eventually he wound up moving to a farm in South Burt. That's how the locals say south of Burt, North Dakota, which is itself like 10 miles away from my hometown. My father was his lawyer. When I worked there, I did his taxes, and he came to the family St. Patrick's Day parties a lot. So I have a lot of memories of just talking with this dude. He just had the graveliest voice you've ever heard. And he nurtured, you know, literature in the state. He was a professor at Jamestown College and at the University of Mary. And now I have a shelf full of his his memoirs and his essay collections, which are indispensable for anyone who wants to be a writer. I would say he has quite a contribution to the canon, you know, as far as that is concerned. The one that, you know, really impacted me was A Step from Death, which, you know, related, you know, his survival during the 1997 blizzards. He almost, you know, died, and while it's like him tripping through his life as he's almost freezing to death. So he's a pretty crazy character, just in terms of that. And he was just tucked away in southwestern North Dakota. It was a privilege to know him. And if you ever want to find something to read, you know, on your Kindle, you might as well give him a try. So, you know, rest in peace, Larry. Rest in peace, Neal. We're better off having had you be a part of the human conversation. And with that, we need to take a Zoom break. and we will resume in about a minute. And we are back. God damn it, Zoom. You're really fucking annoying. I hate this so much.
Yeah, it's kind of... I mean, I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of people jumping ship now that this happens.
Yeah, because it just happens without any warning. So we're going to throw a big fuck you to Zoom right now. Fuck you, Zoom. Because now we have 40 minutes to, try and cover all the fucking ground that comes with talking about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Good googly moogly.
Hey, real quick, before we start on this, I just want to mention today is Free Comic Book Day.
That's right.
It doesn't know. And this kind of, it sort of ties into this comic book movie. And so yeah, go out to your local comic book store and check out the free comics. I have a couple of things from this year that I would recommend. Just real quick, I want to rattle them off.
Go ahead.
Dark Crisis Zero, which I talked about last week a little bit, the big DC summer event. And then there's also a Bloodborne comic that the issue number 1 of it is a free comic book today.
Really?
Yeah, the From Software video game series, the first comic book of that.
Fuck
and
yeah,
so
dude.
It's very highly anticipated. I know people have been waiting for it for a while.
Is Miyazaki writing it, or how
No,
is...
I think it's Cullen Bunn.
Oh, okay.
So,
that's just fine. We like Cullen Bunn.
Yeah, and then the other one I'll give a shout out to is the Boneyard Mythos, which is the first issue of the new Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino book.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So they wrapped up Gideon Falls?
Yep, that's done now. Yep.
Okay.
So this is their new series. Really looking forward to this one because they're basically building a new horror universe, and they're going to write multiple miniseries that all take place in the same universe.
Fuck yeah, dude. So, I'm here for that.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that quickly. Go out to your local comic book shop and get the free comics, and buy something too. Most of them are having sales today also. So get that trade paperback you have your eyes on or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I probably should have done that instead of doing what I did, because this is another quick digression, but I bought A God Somewhere on Amazon without really looking at if you're familiar with that, it's a John Arcudi, Peter Schneeberger. It was the last thing Wildstorm Comics published. If you read that?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I've never read it. No.
It's somewhat derivative, I suppose, but it does the question of what if a normal person just woke up with superpowers one day, but it's a deep psychological study, and it's fucking brutal. But the copy I bought was apparently a discarded library book. So I spent $10.
Did you rip the cover off?
No, but it was in the worst condition I've ever seen. It's got stickers on it that just say discarded. The UPCs scribbled out. They did not represent it very well on Amazon, and you can't just trust that you're getting a new copy. But if you go to your local comic book shop, you're more likely to find something pristine, at least mint. Even if it is a used book that they have in the graphic novel box, mixed in with all of the, the back issues, from 1995. So support your local comic book store. Fuck Amazon. That's another thing. Fuck Amazon. I can't believe anyone would treat a book that poorly. Now it has a good home. But is Sam Raimi is he back home now? Just briefly to say that with this Doctor Strange movie, should he be given more superhero shit? Like, should Marvel keep him around like Taika Waititi or say, like the Russo brothers? Like, does he deserve another run at it? Was this movie what you expected, or did it surprise you, or did it let you down?
Yeah, eventually it did. Eventually it got to the point where I am comfortable saying that, I liked it a good deal. I think the beginning is really bad, like really, really generic, like the first couple scenes of the movie. And eventually, you're kind of sitting there wondering, like, okay, this is supposed to be a Sam Raimi movie, where is his fingerprints on it? And then suddenly, like, around the middle of the movie, and then especially towards the end, you really start seeing a bunch of Sam Raimi like stuff, and you're like, okay, I get it now. And I think that the guy's really old, so I don't know if he's gonna get on like the Marvel payroll, but if he wanted to do more, I would totally say, yeah, go for it. Go do Doctor Strange 3 or whatever. Because they're obviously going to make another one because of how this one ends with the after credit scene. But I did like it eventually. What about you?
I really liked it, and that might be because I hadn't seen the first Doctor Strange. I don't know, maybe I should remedy that. But I really fell off the Marvel wagon. There's a lot of Marvel things I haven't seen, but I was happy to have seen this one. And I didn't really even feel like I needed to have seen things like WandaVision to appreciate what was going on in it. Like, because I'll allude to this later, but in the beginning of it creaks a lot, like you're saying. It's late stage Marvel method, if it's ever been seen, on display, especially after the middling entries we've gotten, since the Eternals and, so forth. But for the most part, especially when it hits its stride and it starts getting fucking weird and creepy, it works way better than most Marvel movies I have seen. But does Marvel have a spoiler problem, like a leak problem, a spoiler problem? There was so much hype and anticipation for things that just didn't happen. Like, I was more mad that, we didn't get Cruz Stark. Yeah. That it was underwhelming when the people who did show up showed up. Like, this is like I tried to cover up the spoilers as much as possible until we actually get there. But apparently, all this stuff was just out there like a week ahead of release. So
it was like literally Sunday night. I remember because I got the big spoiler spoiled for me, and 5 days before the movie came out, all this stuff started showing up, like GIFs and pictures everywhere online. And it's like this is becoming such a trend with Marvel movies. Like, it always happens now. And like, I remember when their biggest movie ever, Avengers Endgame, was leaked by the person who did the Arabic subtitles for the movie. And they literally filmed the screen like with their like camera phone, and you could see they were in like an editing suite somewhere with like a bunch of stuff in front of them. And it was the scene where Thanos gets his head cut off by Thor.
Fuck yeah.
And he just like put that scene online. And this happens with every movie now, literally every single Marvel movie. And I just think that they need to stop like screening these for people, because they're such known quantities now, and you're either going to go see it or you're not,
Exactly. And they have they have an army as a fan base. They have a cult as a fan base. They don't have to try too hard to get us excited if we're going to be excited, like you say. And they gain nothing except to feed the hype machine and the anticipation machine by throwing anything, at these YouTube creatures that masquerade as tastemakers for the internet. They don't need those people anymore. The job has been done. The infection has spread. The mind virus is well in place. If people are going to show up, obviously, because this was really well fucking attended. How did it do at the box office? Like, I guess for its first night, do we know?
Yeah, Thursday night it did 36 million in the U.S. So
respectable.
Yeah, very respectable. And I think, I mean, it's only Saturday, but it's done pretty much that every day since. Well, I guess just Friday, but yeah, it's doing very, very well.
Yeah, I had a packed house. I assume you did as well.
Yep.
And because I had to like look for the right time and the right seat location on AMC's website, I know that like all the other 20 screens, that were also, pretty fucking full. You could only get seats right in the front row for most of them. And I guess that blew my mind, and it's starting to make me sweat about the summer movie wager, because I did not have this at number one, and it probably is going to get there because it has a lot going for it. I guess I don't know how, like, I know people love Benedict Cumberbatch, but how successful was the first Doctor Strange movie?
It was just a moderate success. I think it only did, I want to say 152 million US. And so it's, I mean, for a Marvel movie, pretty middling. But I think this has a lot of things going for it. I mean, it's a sequel. It's the direct follow-up to WandaVision, which people loved. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, Wanda is like the second main character, or the third main character, I guess I should say, behind America Chavez. But and yeah, I mean, I think it was very, very hyped up, and I don't know. You want to get into it a little bit?
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna dive into some territory here, because I did not see WandaVision, but I got the gist of what that show was about, and they allude to it, with a few lines in here, and it
really didn't matter.
It really didn't matter.
You don't need to watch it. I mean, you literally, the status quo that Wanda is at the end of Avengers Endgame is the exact same that she is at the end of WandaVision.
And so it's like, and she has a few scenes to set up where her headspace is at, what's going on with her character, and like without any real notice, they just throw you into the fact that, oh wait, she's the fucking bad guy of this movie. It's not Mephisto. It's not Shumagorath.
Everyone thought that tentacle Cyclops monster was Shumagorath,
which it was not Shumagorath. It was some other dumb unnamed
Gigantos.
Yeah, is that what it was? Yeah. But it was just some demon thing. But it wasn't like Blackheart showed up or something like that. No, it was Wanda. And they did a good job, I think, of turning her in, like slowly getting her to the point where she's just this, menace across all time and space and all known realities, dream walking into different versions of herself to, just murder as many fucking people as possible. Terminator. Yeah, exactly. Just astral projecting herself, into other timelines and universes. And it didn't really hit home how brutal it was gonna get until it fucking happened. But I guess we'll just say it right off the bat. The fucking Illuminati, they were so smug that I was so happy just to see them get fucking murked with no fucking effort. It took nothing to just wipe the floor with them. And so just seeing that kind of unrestrained power from your bad guy was great, because you actually felt like, oh shit, everyone's fucked. No one can stop this. There's no way the hero can do anything. And that's rare for any movie, frankly. But it really showcased how fucking overpowered Scarlet Witch is. And it was, I guess, I enjoyed that up until the moment where she just realizes that she was being an asshole and then kills herself. Yeah. Yeah. So it was really awesome until they just kind of realized, well, she needs to grow. That's really, she needs to heal. That's really what will stop her.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really torn about the Illuminati scene and that whole multiverse sequence, because the fan in me is like, yeah, this is really cool, but then I don't know if it necessarily makes a good movie. That whole middle section with the Illuminati could literally be cut out of the movie and it wouldn't affect anything. Because she just shows up. Yeah, she shows up, they die. She fails to catch Doctor Strange and America Chavez, and yeah, I mean, you could literally edit that entire sequence out of the movie and it would be like exactly the same. And um, but it was pretty fun to see, especially like the like Black Bolt and his head blowing up. And, you know,
That was so unexpected.
yeah, and so violent, and it's just kind of a reminder of, you know, like this movie probably for all intents and purposes should be rated R.
Yeah.
But if you have enough weight to throw around and enough money to throw around, you can get any rating that you want in Hollywood. Like the MPAA doesn't give a shit. Like Disney can be like, you will rate this movie PG-13, and they're just like, yes, we will. And you know, it very violent, and not that I'm complaining.
Well, yeah, there was no sex in it, so they were fine. You know, like, it didn't matter that you had Sam Raimi, you know, playing, well, like the most gruesome games possible with the, you know, these characters. It almost like was an episode of The Boys, you know, with that particular sequence where you literally see, you know, Mr. Fantastic's eyeballs, you know, just hanging there as he's unraveled before our very eyes. Is the implication that John Krasinski is coming back in a future Fantastic Four film, or are they going to give this officially they've designated that the MCU is Earth 616, like the comics mainline universe? So, are we actually going to see him in a 616 Fantastic Four movie? Do you think?
I do, yeah, because they've already said. I don't know. Have you seen that that sort of trailer that they released a couple, maybe like a year or so ago, that showed their like entire lineup to come? Did you see that? And at the very, very end of that, they have the Fantastic Four logo. And I mean, we're getting the Fantastic Four. There's no doubt about it. The question is if it's going to be the John Krasinski led Fantastic Four. And I think it will be, because I mean, that's the thing about multiverses is you can bring back, if you truly want to, an unlimited amount of dead characters, and I'm sure they're going to pull him out of another universe.
See,
or pull him out of the 616 universe.
And now that we have America Chavez, you know, with her dimension hopping powers, you know, universe jumping powers, we probably could get some like real Grant Morrison type shit where we do get just like 10 different versions of Iron Man there to save the day in some future movie. You know, we're gonna have Barack Obama Iron Man just because he obviously exists somewhere. And yeah, this is the summer of the multiverse. If we also look at, you know, Everything Everywhere All at Once is kind of the prelude to it. This is the Marvel, you know, version of that kind of thing. Did you catch any of the places that they kind of trip through as they just kind of like, you know, fall through through time? Apparently, one of them is supposed to be Mustafar from Star Wars.
Oh, really? No, okay, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's like a lava world at one point.
Okay.
And that's what that is supposed to be. So they're even folding Star Wars into the MCU, essentially, like having that kind of corporate synergy that Space Jam gave us.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it, but then again, I could totally see that just being like fan, you know, fan headcanon, basically.
Exactly.
Like, that's Mustafar, but yeah, that was a highlight. That was a cool sequence of the movie, where they trip through all the different multiverses, and there's like a paint one, and like there was one that was like all wildlife or all like plants, and there was one that was they were just like sketch drawings, I think, and yeah, it was cool.
There was even like the destroyed one, like the incursion universe. That's like a weird melding of two different timelines. If you do see people, they're all wearing hats. I believe, and that is a reference to the internet meme John Titor, who supposedly is a time traveler who comes from a different universe. It's
that picture.
Yeah,
the picture of that guy with like the in the crowd. Is that what you're talking
about? Maybe that's what I'm conflating. But yeah, because that's apparently John Titor's came from the exact same world as ours, except everyone wears hats. And so that seemed like a weird thing to slip in there for no reason at all. But
You
yeah,
want to talk a little bit about like the, I mean, I guess just kind of like the Sam Raimi of it all. Like
yeah.
what was your favorite sort of Sam Raimi bits, or what did you notice? Like,
Well, it was kind of the synergy between him and Danny Elfman with the score, because those whenever like it was time to get fucking spooky, he'd just fucking crank the synths up, and just like everything was timed so perfectly with like the twitchy camera stuff. But anytime you got like a like Dutch angle dolly zoom on something, you're watching a Raimi movie, and that kind of kicked in right when Wanda really dropped the mask and was like, "I'm the Scarlet Witch, bitch! I'm gonna kill you all!" And yeah, that's when like the ride that was this movie really took off, and and that's when I felt like, oh, I'm at home again. This is the Evil Dead, but with Marvel characters.
yeah, the I noticed like the first person perspective shots, like from Evil Dead where the camera's going through the woods. They did a little bit of that in this, and the mirrors. He has some sort of fascination with mirrors, and yeah, and then just like a lot of the style of it, like I think my favorite scene in the entire film, and I doubt a lot of other people would really recognize this as their favorite, but there's a scene where it's like the perfect melding of image and soundtrack, where Wanda, it's when she's trying to dream walk for the first time, and at the same time it's right when Doctor Strange is drinking the spiked tea.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool, like that whole sequence. The soundtrack is like electric guitars.
Yeah.
And the camera's like panning around Scarlet Witch in a circle, and it just has this really, and I think there's even like sitars in the soundtrack, and yeah, really, really good. That was like probably the highlight of the movie for me. And then I really like the musical note fight.
Yeah. There like great imagination to this. They did everything they possibly could with what they had that Marvel allows them to do. Because the Danny Elfman really let himself, have fun. And Raimi definitely, had fun when he was in control. But like there was a quote that I came across of him talking about the experience of making this, and his overriding issue was it's hard to make a movie when you don't know how it fucking ends, because all the previs people are the people really figuring out what the ending of the movie is. Like the Marvel cinematic method, when done properly, involves having all of those effect sequences preordained ahead of time, and the filmmaker fills in the gaps in between them. And he probably hadn't seen what kind of was the capstone to the film, and you can kind of tell that's that kind of undermined like what was going well for it, because it just lost a lot of the cohesion that the middle of the movie found. And I think that's why the beginning and the end kind of kind of do a disservice to everything that happens in the middle. And so yeah, he did his best to put his stamp on this movie, but it definitely kind of, just like I've said before, this is late stage Marvel method. This is where it's so self-reliant on everything that has come before, or the other content that was served to introduce it, and all the content it will set up in the future. And that's just what a Marvel movie does. And we can't bitch about that. That's what we're here for at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. The ending was very strange, and I mean, obviously, the thing that I didn't like about it was, I don't know if you caught this, but when that tower thing, the stone tower that has the
temple, the Wanda temple that's existed since the beginning of time.
Yeah, while it's collapsing, she obviously doesn't die, because they very, very obviously, at least I thought, they put a like red effect in the middle of it. Did you notice that?
I did.
Like where it's collapsing, and then as it's collapsing, suddenly there's like a red effect that's sort of to signify her powers are being used. And so obviously what she's doing is like using her powers to like keep herself from being crushed, and she's going to show up somewhere down the line.
Got to, like, it. And she's way too popular of a character, and she's been set up as like the most powerful character in the whole situation. Like, she's bound to show up again, especially if they're going to try and shoehorn mutants, into the proceedings. They might as well just have her go, bzz, there's mutants now, do reverse House of M, have her be the reason why Wolverine's now there, or something to that effect. It's wait, and with a movie that was willing to literally show someone's, like, a superhero's head cave in, or, like, you see people get immolated, like, you can't trust that anyone has died if they don't actually show you the squished, viscera of Scarlet Witch. we know she's alive. She's got to be.
Yeah.
They need her. They need her.
Yeah, for sure. And then, also to kind of speak a little more on the ending, like the actual ending of the movie, like the last scene was so weird because it was like, it's almost like he didn't know how to end it, where, when Doctor Strange is walking through the streets and then suddenly he like doubles over in pain, and then
the third eye shows up. What do we know? Like, that's just a reflection that he has a corruption from using the Darkhold, right? Is that what
or he's the guy from the universe where everything's dead, basically. I don't know, like, or he's turning into that guy. I guess I'm not really sure, but I don't think that's I don't know if that's the case, because did you stick around for at least the first end credit scene?
I stayed for both. But
okay. Yeah. They completely like undo the ending in that scene.
They might as well have had that after credit scene be the end.
Yeah, because he, in the actual ending, he's like doubling over in pain and he's like in agony. And then in that scene, he's like, "Oh, I'm cool now. I got my third eye.
I'm just walking down the street. I have adapted." Yeah. And that, so I might as well, since we're talking about after credit scenes, Charlize shows up as a character that nobody knows. Like, the reaction from the theater I was in was a lot of people literally just looking at each other and going, "What?" like people had high expectations and they were let down, because we just see Charlize wearing a leftover costume from Celestials, slashing a hole in reality so that they can jump in it together to have the next adventure, whatever that's going to be. Whenever that's going to be. Who the fuck knows when we're going to connect the dot from the end of this movie to whenever that shows up again? I don't know what the release schedule shows.
Probably like 7 or 8 years, because
it's absurd.
They're really bad at that. Like, I made a note to go back and look at all the after credit scenes, and every single end credit scene that has happened since the pandemic started, there have been 5 movies and 5 TV shows. Not one of them has been paid off yet, except for WandaVision, because that's this movie.
This movie is this movie exists, to end WandaVision's story, basically. Yeah. Oh wow, it's raining. Sorry.
Oh really?
Yeah.
But yeah, that character, just to kind of speak on that a little bit, I didn't know who she was, but I guess her name is Vina, and she is the closest thing Doctor Strange has to a love interest in the comics, I guess. Okay. And so,
because here they are at Happy Times, from that graphic that I poached from someone. I'm unrepentant. Come after me if you must. But yeah, much different costume, but apparently, like, the dark universe is the one that they go into. Like, that's the location she's bringing him to. And apparently it's all his fault. He fucked something up. He stepped on a butterfly somewhere in this whole, experience that is this movie. And so yeah, I've teased this graphic a couple times now, but yeah, it's like, where does this rank for you as far as Marvel movies go?
I would say it probably sits pretty comfortably in like the middle for me, middle of the pack, maybe the like upper middle. For me personally, I would say, just so people kind of know like where I stand on what movies, bottom tier Marvel for me is probably like Ant-Man, Iron Man 2 and 3, Thor 1 and 2, and then like top tier stuff is probably like Captain America Winter Soldier, Guardians 1.
Just rewatched that the other day. It's just as good as when I first saw it. Love that movie.
probably Endgame too. Endgame's just impressive as something that exists, like as the culmination of like literally 15 years of movies. But yeah, this would sit somewhere in the middle for me probably.
Yeah.
I don't. There's nothing that I was super against in it. I think, the most offensive thing, like I said before, in it is probably just how pointless that middle section is. Like, it's almost as if the script was like 20 pages too short and they're like, put something else in there, and so but other than that, there's nothing that offensive about it. But what about you?
I would have to agree just about it being, it's it's not like so middling that I never want to see it again, like those two Thor movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it I think it will hold up better over time, just because the parts that do fucking work better than most. Like, they have entire movies that don't work as good as those sequences, in the middle of this movie, discounting the Illuminati section. I would watch it again. I like it about as much as I like Spider-Man No Way Home, which was fun and everything, but it's not the greatest thing since sliced bread. Even that movie, that movie has its issues with its, crossover section kind of killing some momentum and just being there for fan service. And granted, those sequences just exist for people in the audience to go, yeah, that fucking. There were so many woo boys, so many Marvel boys in my theater who just, oh my god, it's John Krasinski, Reed Richards, like, and I'm happy for them, but it's not enough to, that doesn't make a good movie. And if all that they're there for is for the shock value of their deaths, then how important were they to the movie anyway? And yeah, so
on a more meta level, if John Krasinski being in this movie is the last we see of him, it will almost make it all worth it.
It will be hilarious.
Because for like literally the last like 10 years, all people can talk about, all the fans can talk about is, we want John Krasinski as Reed Richards and we want Emily Blunt as Sue. And like that's all, like that's like the number one fan casting for this universe, other than Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man back in the day.
Yeah,
and they finally did it. So if this is all that we see of him, that would be so hilarious.
So yeah, like, this is just for fun. If we're gonna cast a Fantastic Four movie, who the fuck do we cast? Like who is left? Because when I think about who should, like, when I think of Sue Storm, my mind goes, oh, Florence Pugh. Oh, wait, they wasted her in that fucking Black Widow movie. She can't, have another part in this. Well, so who's fucking left? I don't fucking know. Unless they're gonna, there's, I don't know. It's
I
a
can
pickle.
see somebody like a little more like, because I mean, I don't know, what I've always seen Sue Storm as is like a blonde, thin woman, I guess. And so I guess the first thing that maybe comes to mind for me, especially if they want to go a bit on like the younger side, would be like somebody like Samara Weaving or something like that.
There you go. That's outside the box. I'll take that. Yeah. All the other roles, who the fuck knows? But it would be really fucking, though. There was a missed opportunity here. Having like Ian Griffith, or however you say his name, and like Jessica Alba show up in this movie somehow. Like, he should have been Reed Richards. Like,
that would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome. That would have been hilarious. But it was satisfying watching John Krasinski's head pop, on TV though. That ruled. But yeah, overall, this was pretty dang good. It's better than fucking Eternals by a long shot. I enjoyed it a lot more than, Shang-Chi, and what else has come out that has just been underwhelming? Like pretty much everything since Endgame, until this movie, this movie and Spider-Man. That's been it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and then you have all the TV shows, which none of them have been very good. And oh, by the way, while we're on the subject, oh my God, the Moon Knight finale is like legendarily bad finale.
Really?
Absolutely horrible, like absolutely terrible, terrible. Like I would almost say don't even bother with the show at this point because it was very bad. And it's really funny. I don't know. I don't think Oscar Isaac's going to come back because it seems like all the interviews he's given lately, he always seems to bring up the fact that he's like, Marvel didn't get me under contract and I have absolutely no obligation to return as the character. So
what a guy.
like, he always says that, and it's like, well, yeah, great show commitment there, dude. Like,
It's a great negotiating tactic. It's a little bit like, football players deleting their teams, like pictures off their Instagram just to send a message. Because it's like, hey, if the fans that want me, you got to lock me up. You got to put a ring on it, Marvel. They're probably looking at the numbers going, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have trusted Moorhead and Benson with this. This was a little too weird. But who knows? I almost feel like we shouldn't blame them for its failures.
They ended up only, I think, directing like 2 of the episodes because the other ones were directed by that Mohammed Diab guy who is an Egyptian director, and I think that's kind of why he's there, is because Marvel or Disney didn't want to get any flack for like cultural appropriation or whatever.
God damn it. Well, I don't know. If people, like a thing, let them run with it. I don't think anyone from Iceland is too pissed at Robert Eggers. For context here. I don't think anyone's mad about that. But yeah, we're running into another Zoom break, so let's kind of wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts on the Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah, I would say, go see it. It is, I think by its end, it is definitively a Sam Raimi movie, and it's one of, it's certainly better than Spider-Man 3, which was the last time Sam Raimi was playing in this superhero universes, and it's good, and it's a great follow-up to Spider-Man. And the only thing I hope is that this whole multiverse thing doesn't get too like old too fast, because I think it's already starting to sag a little bit. And
they've done pretty much everything that you can do.
So I really hope that it doesn't define this entire phase of the MCU.
They blew their load with No Way Home. You can't get any bigger than having all 3 of the Spider-Men on screen again. Oh my God, someone's trying to break in.
Go see it. And you want to wrap up this part and then we'll come back for a couple more minutes for the last stuff?
Yep, sounds good. Be right back, everybody. And we are back. Very quickly, we're just gonna wrap things up here. We have a few things coming out next week. Firestarter, which is going to be available in theaters and on Peacock, which is funny to me. Like you have to pay money on Peacock to see it.
Yeah, I know that Peacock is one of those streaming services where you can watch some stuff for free, but all of their premium stuff is locked behind a paywall, and this is going to be one of them.
And they aren't very clear about what is and isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty much all of their new movies and then The Office.
Yeah.
So,
and that Tiger King show that I will watch someday, just because I want to see. Is it John Cameron Mitchell? Playing a gay icon that is Joe Exotic. But otherwise, they don't really have anything for me. But Hulu has a movie called Candy. That series. It's a series. Hulu. Okay. Yeah. And that is a series about another ripped from the headlines thing about a lady who killed her friend Like her friend, like is it kind of like, is that the vibe?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's kind of another true crime show
like
from
Pam.
Hulu. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, but hopefully better. Hey, do you know who's behind this?
No.
Your boy Nick Antosca.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
he's the I don't know, I don't think he's the showrunner, but he is. I think he's at least written some of the episodes, and he's a producer on it.
Well,
so.
good for him. Good for him for stepping back from the Gonzo world, that was Brand New Cherry Flavor and everything that he did with Channel Zero. So a little more grounded. All right. I'm here for it. And wait, the Kids in the Hall are back on Prime Video?
Yeah, that's the revival of the 80s sketch show on Prime. Yep.
And Apple TV has a new joint, which is the Essex Serpent, which just kind of reminds me of what's that called? It's a famous Australian miniseries about a priest who falls in love with a woman. But is there more to the Essex Serpent, or like, what do you know about that?
Yeah, I think there may or may not be some supernatural elements, because the premise of the show, other than the romance between Claire Danes and Tom Hiddleston, is she moves to this small like seaside town to investigate reports of a mythical serpent, like a literal
Big
like Loch Ness monster.
Okay. Bizarre. Because yeah, it reminded me of the Thornbirds. That's the thing I was thinking of, was the famous the book in miniseries. But if there's more to it than that, I'm here. I'm interested. And it has all of our favorite pretty people. And it's a period piece. It looks mysterious. Very interesting. And other than that, and then we have on video on demand the film On the Count of Three, which might be a little controversial because it's about two friends who commit to killing each other.
Yeah, it's the directorial debut of Gerard Carmichael, which I think he's a stand-up comedian normally.
Yeah, he did. Is it yeah, because he has like a stand-up on HBO actually called Rothaniel. Yeah.
So yeah, and then I think the other guy is Christopher Abbott from Possessor. And
that's right.
I think they make some sort of pact to commit suicide together or something like that. It's a very dark comedy from what I understand. It's got a lot of good word of mouth though, and it's going to be in theaters this week in limited release, and then hopefully video on demand. So
things to keep our eyes out for. We're gonna kind of figure out like after the show what we're gonna do, because it depends a great deal on what is available and what we're interested in. We might be talking Tokyo Vice. We might be doing On the Count of Three. We will figure that out when we get there. We're gonna keep you in suspense. But that kind of sums it all up. We had a lot of ground to cover. This was a banger of an episode. And thank you for watching. Thanks for joining us.
Didn't you had a parting question, didn't you?
That's right. Thanks for reminding me. So very briefly, I got it because something is kind of coming up in the real world right now. But yeah, AMC has this thing at their theaters called MacGuffins. They have a bar in the theater. And I went up there and I was just like, okay, I'm not going to, instead of getting concessions, what else can I do? And I could buy it all told, it was like a $15,
movie themed cocktail.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't get the cocktail. I just got an aviation gin, and tonic. And oh my God, was that good. And he burnt the fuck out of it. The guy who sold it to me was so high that he thought that Doctor Strange was called Doctor Strange Love, and he and so he gave me way too much, way too much gin in that thing. Not that I complained, but it made the experience a lot, like it was fun until it was like, oh my God, like this cost way too much money. So like what upgrade would you want to add to the theater going experience? And it doesn't necessarily have to do this, but it can cut both ways. You know, like what would be an addition but also detract from, you know, being in a theater? Because now I can trust that, you know, people are either just going to be smuggling in alcohol in greater frequency because now that there's a bar in the theater, like something like that. Like what is missing from the theatrical experience that might not be ideal for others, but good for you?
Okay. Yeah, this is a good one. I've got an idea. So
Right on.
yeah.
Well, and that kind of that wraps it up. And I'll jump the gun, but as I said before, thank you for watching, and thank you, Matt, for taking your time to, you know, sit down, think about all this, and then come talk to us, talk to me about it. So have a week, everybody.
Yep. See ya.